Good evening. Welcome to Fineprint. I'm Molly Kampeed. The United Kingdom is grappling with an intensifying coronavirus crisis. The number of COVID-19 cases has been on the rise, and among those hospitalized with the disease is the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. 24 hours after he was hospitalized for persistent COVID-19 symptoms, the leader has now been moved into an intensive care unit. Doctors at the St. Thomas Hospital in London say his symptoms have worsened on Monday, forcing them to take that decision. A minister in Johnson's cabinet has admitted that the Prime Minister was given oxygen support but was never put on a ventilator. Downing Street's messaging has changed over the last 24 hours. Initially, they maintained that Boris Johnson would remain in charge of the government, but the latest statement says that Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab has been asked to take over the tasks wherever necessary. The Foreign Secretary has vowed to implement the Prime Minister's directives and assured that the government is under control.
An incredibly strong team spirit behind the Prime Minister and making sure that we get all of the plans that the Prime Minister has instructed us to deliver to get them implemented as soon as possible. And that's the way we'll bring the whole country through the coronavirus challenge that we face right now.
Dominic Raab will now be attending all the crucial meetings and leading Britain's coronavirus response. Crucial decisions like the need for restrictions on movement will now rest on his shoulders. Going straight across now to our London Bureau Chief, Mandy Clark, who's joining us for more on that. Mandy, hi, what's the update on Boris Johnson's health condition?
Well, we have got a bit more of an update. Michael Gove has come out, who's part of the Conservative cabinet, and saying that Boris Johnson does not have pneumonia. There was some news or rumors circulating that he might be suffering from pneumonia. He's clarified that. He did also say earlier that he has received oxygen, but he's absolutely not on a ventilator. And there's an important difference with that, because a ventilator is essentially assisted breathing, and that requires the patient to be in essentially a forced coma to have a ventilator. So it means the Prime Minister is conscious, he's not on a ventilator, he is getting assisted air, and he doesn't have pneumonia. And that is what we know of his condition so far. We certainly know he has worsened. He is described to be in good spirits. But there's a marked seriousness to the tone now, which we are hearing from Downing Street about Boris Johnson. We're not getting hour-by-hour updates on his health, but the news we do have is he is not suffering pneumonia, which would put him at greater risk.
Right, and also talking about the measures that are currently in place across the UK, and talking about whether or not there will be an imposition of stricter measures, Mandy, because we're looking at how the Londoners, for example, have not been abiding by the measures that are in place at the moment.
Well, certainly on the weekend there was what was described as a small minority who flouted the social distancing rules, and the current restrictions are that you are only allowed outside to go to shops for vital supplies, and also to do your daily exercise. That's cycling, walking or running. Quite a few people were seen sunbathing, and the health secretary, Matt Hancock, made it clear that he will have to impose tighter restriction, lock down public green spaces if people continue to flout those rules. Now, as soon as he said that, within hours, you could see those public spaces emptying out. So certainly a lot of people heard the message, but if they do continue to violate it, there is every chance that Londoners and the rest of the UK will lose that freedom of movement they currently have.
All right, we're going to leave it there for the moment, Mandy. Appreciate very much for joining us on the broadcast with those updates. Moving on, China maintains it has managed to flatten the infection rate curve, but there is clearly no escaping from the slowdown, even for the second largest economy in the world. The collapse in industrial production, retail sales and fixed asset investment is a lot more serious than analysts had earlier expected. The coronavirus pandemic has led to slowing down of production for the manufacturing giant, and as a result, nearly 500,000 Chinese firms have closed permanently in the first quarter. The pace of new firms being established has also slowed down as a result significantly, as registration of new firms between January and March also fell to around 3.2 million businesses, which is down 29% on year-to-year basis. The closures follow a slump in overseas demand for exports because of the worsening coronavirus crisis in other countries, and includes firms whose operating licenses had either been revoked or the operations or the businesses that had decided to terminate operations voluntarily as well. The shutdown includes 26,000 firms from the export sector. The lockdown has also hit retail sales in China, which collapsed 20.5% in the first 2 months of this year. Similarly, fixed asset investment measuring infrastructure expenditure also plummeted by 24.5%. This particular slump is the first indication of contraction on record. China, with an economy at risk of a contraction in the first quarter for the first time since 1976, is overwhelmed with business closures, and this underlines the challenges ahead as China tries to revive its economy. The country has announced a slew of measures, including more financial support for small and medium enterprises. In January and February, China's central bank arranged a total $114 billion of special re-lending funds. China's Ministry of Finance also said that it will allow the country's local governments to further increase the bonds in 2020 to stimulate the economy, which is set to shrink with the impact of the pandemic. Forecast for China's economy shows an across-the-board contraction on the back of underlying structural slowdown. Production and demand for vehicles also affected severely as a result of lockdowns. China's Association of Automobile Manufacturers expects China's overall auto sales to drop 5% this year. The association has urged the government to help the industry-wide sales, and this is after the sales had plunged a record 79% in February from a year earlier due to lower demand. Economic momentum has not yet turned negative for the manufacturing giant, yet the country is staring at its first credit downturn in decades as consumers fall behind on personal loans and credit card payments.